while we're congratulating each other for winning the NBA championships, we want to also be the champions of more housing in San Francisco. So, this incredible day, I can't think of a better way to celebrate the NBA champs with yet another announcement of our city's advancement on a very complex, challenging issue for our city. Thank you all for being here this morning. About 3 years ago, as a city, we started the conversation with our planning department, with Supervisor Norman Yee, Katy, Tang, Ahsha, Safai. Wasn't there yet as a supervisor, but we started without him. And now he's caught up, big time. A conversation about the missing middle, where we realized that we were losing a lot of middle-class folks in this city, working folks who worked hard and yet could not afford the housing prices, nor could they qualify for the subsidies or the affordable housing units that were being built and rehabbed in the city. So we went about looking at ways in which to do it. And I want to say thank you to our Director of Planning, who informed us with facts and ideas of where we can build more. And I want to say thank you to Supervisor Katy Tang for her steadfast leadership in bringing this to the fore, and ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, a unanimous vote at the Board of Supervisors. We realized that if we took up middle-income housing and took up monies in our subsidized program, we would be hurting ourselves, because many of those programs are dedicated to low income, and they wouldn't get federal or state matching grants if we then started grabbing that money. So we didn't want to do that. What we wanted to do was have a better, more dedicated sharing conversation with our private developers. And we were able to do that with the leadership of John Ram and our Board of Supervisors working together with me to have that careful, delicate conversation. And we also always have to approach it delicately. When we're asking the private sector to do more, we have to be smart about it. We have to be logical about it. We have to be economically efficient about it. And so we went about doing that, but with a very strong dedication that we wanted to keep families in our city, growing families, families that represent our healthcare workers, represent our firefighters, represent our teachers and teacher aides, representing our 911 call takers and dispatchers, which we haven't done over many, many years. So that's why we call it the missing middle. And I want to make sure that our happiness today is reflected in the signing of this very important legislation so that we can build some additional 16,000 homes if we do it right, and guaranteeing that at least 5,000 of those become permanently affordable to our families. This is what we intend to do. This is what we will do. And by the way, we didn't make it easy on ourselves. We wanted to make sure that they were large enough units. So 40% of those units will have at least 2 bedrooms and be family friendly in their amenities. This is what we did, and this is reflective of not just a simple goal, a complicated goal that Supervisor Tang guided with all of her colleagues at the board to have a very positive conversation that benefits all of us. If we don't have a middle class that lives in the city, if we're recruiting people in essential workforces outside the city, we're going to have more and more stories about essential people that have essential jobs that can't get into our city on time. We don't want that to happen. We want more families to be in our city, and this is the right way to do it. And then, guided by many of the principles that our planning department has, we will build these in transit-rich corridors of our city. That's another smart planning goal that's accomplished here. So, as I said earlier, this process took about 3 years, got a lot of smart people behind it, like all of you that are sitting in front and standing in front of me. All of you contributed to this with your advocacy, the language that you use to bring people together and not be divisive about this. And bringing everybody together means we get to do great things in this city. So I think that the guide here, the leader here that really accomplished a lot of this dialogue, a lot of this good language and conversation with Supervisor Katy Tang, she deserves a special applause. All right. So my pleasure to introduce the author of this legislation, Supervisor Katy Tang.
Thank you so much. I just have to absorb this moment because, as our team knows, we'd never thought we'd make it here or have it be 11-0. So technically, you're the main author, Mayor Lee, but I just want to thank you all so much for being here today. And, you know, here in San Francisco, I know that we all pride ourselves so much on being an inclusive city. And I think that that's so important, and we have to embrace that all the way down to our housing policies. But really, for too long, we have not done so, I believe, in our housing policies. And we have not built housing for middle and income and workforce households. And yet, in San Francisco, our most rapidly declining population are our middle income families. And so when we talk about people who work here and want to live here but can't do so, you know, we're talking about our janitors, our construction workers, of course, our teachers who make at starting salary about $56,000 a year, and they're placed at about 70% of the area median income and don't qualify for many of our below market rate housing units. Can you believe that? And so we do need to create more housing for our middle income families, or else we will no longer have a middle class here in San Francisco. And so I think one of the beauties of Home SF is that we are actually doing something. It's not just symbolic legislation. We have actually had developers waiting for years for us to work on this, and there are projects in the pipeline. And just today I saw in the news that there's actually a project that revised its plan to incorporate more affordability and height given our work. So this isn't just something that is a piece of legislation that won't do anything, but actually over the course of 20 years, as the mayor said, we'll create 16,000 new units, but 5,000 of those will be permanently affordable, not only for the middle income bracket, but also for our low income bracket as well. So I believe this is truly a very inclusive policy that has been put together. And I'll just say also that, we've been joined by my colleagues here, Supervisor Safai and Supervisor Sheehy, but it was a unanimous vote. And I'll just have to thank my colleagues for recognizing the importance of this legislation and actually being courageous as well to say that, yes, we do need development in our city. We need more of it. The other, I think, beauty of Home SF is that it really encourages development, not just in places where we have already seen development and growth. It actually brings development to neighborhoods like the Sunset, like Supervisor Safai's district, and elsewhere where we haven't seen the growth, but it is desperately needed along our transit and commercial corridors. And I'm also very proud that this is, I think, very groundbreaking legislation that puts so much more consideration for small businesses than any other existing law or housing program on the books. And so that's something that I hope other programs or other laws will emulate as well. So in closing, I'll just say this has just been such a great team effort. Like winning the NBA championships, it requires a lot of people working together with a lot of heart. And so I want to give my extreme thanks to the technical people behind this who really eliminated all the politics out of this important housing policy. Director Ram, thank you so much for your staff. We have Kirsten Dissinger, Paolo Ikizoe, and Marie Rogers. We have Jacob here. We have from our Mayor's Office of Housing, Kate Hartley, and your former colleague, Sophie Hayward. We have Jeff Buckley from Mayor's Office. I know we have OEWD, Krizia, working hard to bring development to our much needed areas. And of course, we have a lot of community partners, YIMBY Action Now, SF Hack. And for the first time, I think I saw so many individual neighbors coming out to testify about how important it was to create housing for this segment of the population, which I hadn't seen before. So I want to thank every single individual neighbor who did something, who came out to land use committee, who wrote a blog post, who, counteracted the messaging that was going on about how we are actually not taking away from low-income housing, we are actually adding to it. So again, I want to thank everyone. I know I'm probably missing a few folks. I want to thank Deanna Keyson from my office previously. And I'll just say that, I was lucky enough to grow up here in San Francisco, and I know that so many others would like to call San Francisco their home. So let's build more housing because everyone deserves a home. And of course, I want to bring up my only co-sponsor, Supervisor Safai, for recognizing very early on just how Home SF was going to help us revitalize a lot of our struggling commercial corridors. So welcome, Supervisor Safai.
Let's give it up one more time for Supervisor Katy Tang. I'm going to be really brief. A lot has been said already that I think really hits home the main point of what we did with this legislation. At the end of the day, when we started this conversation, and I was very fortunate to be working with the men and women of labor in this city, the conversation was about affordable housing and what does affordable housing mean, and density, and parts of San Francisco contributing their fair share to our housing crisis. And at the end of the day, we started with a very narrow definition of affordable housing, and now we've expanded it to include, as the mayor said and Supervisor Katy Tang said, firefighters, teachers, nurses, hotel workers, janitors, 911 dispatchers, reporters, city staff, people that at the end of the day make this city run and are the backbone of this city. And so we have done something that many other locales in California have not been able to do, and many other parts of the United States. So I want to say true leadership is identifying a problem and then figuring out a way to solve that problem. And our true leaders were Supervisor Katy Tang for her steadfast commitment, and Mayor Lee for making a commitment a few years ago that we were going to build housing and we were going to build affordable housing and we were going to do it the right way. And through Mayor Lee's leadership and Supervisor Katy Tang's leadership, we ended with an 11-0 vote. And not many people could have believed, as she said, that would have happened 6 months ago today. So I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you for all the different staff, all the different community groups, all the different individuals, all the different business leaders that are going to now participate in this program. We're going to build housing, we're going to keep people working, and we're going to begin to solve somewhat in a positive way our housing crisis. So thank you very much. And the next person who played a key role in this was our planning director, who doesn't really need an introduction, who's been doing a phenomenal job, but Mr. John Ram. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor, and thank you all for being here. I am thrilled that this program is moving forward. We started this 3 years ago thinking there has to be a way to structure a program to further incentivize developers to build low and moderate income housing in larger numbers, and this program is it. And I'm so thrilled to be here today because, as the supervisors have said, we didn't know we would be there a year ago from now. We didn't know that this was going to happen, and I have an extraordinary staff who I will thank in a minute who had undying optimism that this would happen. And so I really want to thank you all for being here. This program creates, as has been said, 16,000 units of housing, but most importantly, 5,000 units of those, a third of them, will be affordable to low and moderate income people, and that is pretty extraordinary. And that's without any public subsidy. It's important to remember that those 5,000 units would require $1.5 billion of public subsidy if we were to build them as a city. So that's an extraordinary thing that we can put forward here to say that we are making this housing happen over the next 20 years without that public subsidy. So I want to just spend a couple of moments. I know Supervisor Tang thanked my staff, and Jacob Bentliff, Anne Marie Rogers, Paolo Ikuzoe, and Kirsten Dissinger. And I just want to spend 2 minutes with a special note, a shout out to Kirsten. Kirsten Dissinger conceived of this program 3 years ago, put together a team in the department and the Mayor's Office of Housing to really make this thing happen. Pulled together extraordinary amounts of data and analysis to show that this program can work. We hired consultants, David Baker and Libby Seifel, to do the financial and architectural analysis to do this work, to justify this work, showing that it can in fact work, that this will be an incentive for developers to build this housing. And it works. And we already have developers coming in the door asking us about the program, wanting to move forward with the program. So Kirsten, thank you so much for your dedication and work on this. And I also a special shout out to Kate Hartley in the Mayor's Office of Housing. I think the partnership, one of the things about city government, as you know, is that we all kind of live in our silos, but none of us can do our work without crossing those silos. And I think the partnership right now between the Planning Department and the Mayor's Office of Housing is an extraordinary one that is, I think, one of the strongest bonds in city government right now. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for your work. Just another shout out to the city attorney's office, who spent hours with us conceiving of this program and trying to make it happen. So, in closing, I want to thank Mayor Lee for your leadership. I want to thank Supervisors Katy, Tang, and Ahsha Safai for their leadership and for your constant support of what we think is great policy. And I just want to say, you know, this is a part of a larger effort. We are not done with our work. We have to move forward with more of this work. We have to think of other creative ways to get more affordable and middle-income housing in the city. We're ready to do that. We really want to form these types of partnerships in the future to make it happen. Thank you all, and congratulations to all of us. And Mayor Lee, I now invite you to have a seat and actually sign the legislation into law. Thank you.